Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this afternoon for this commemorative ceremony of the life and the poetry of Gil Colgate. My name is Kurt Hackbarth. I know many of you, and I look forward to meeting a lot more of you this afternoon. I'll tell you a little bit about Gil, and this is from his obituary that was in the New York Times. A native New Yorker, Gil attended Taft and then Yale, where he founded the Senior Society Manuscript. After serving as a naval officer, he went on to a career in securities printing, pioneering the use of holography and the counterproofing of credit cards and currency, developing several patents, and rising to senior vice president of U.S. Banknote Company. He also served as commissioner of the New York City Human Rights Commission in the 1970s, was chairman of the board of Travelers Aid International, and served also on the World Board of Directors of the USO for 20 years. What to say of Gil's poetry over the many years that I presented his books here? Gil's poetry is playful. Gil's poetry is honest and sincere, and as he himself said, Gil's poetry, as opposed to so many contemporary currents of poetry, of self-important poetry, Gil's poetry is understandable. In his final days and weeks, Gil received, as we all know, a very difficult diagnosis. When I heard about the diagnosis, I called him. Maybe I was a little bit nervous. It's hard to talk to someone who you know has brain cancer. So I called, and he answered, normal voice, and I said, "Hey, Gil, it's Kurt. How you doing?" I guess it's just a tick. It was just a reflex. That's how I always call people. And Gil said to me, "You've got a way with words, Mr. Hackbarth. I've just had a death sentence." And he was right. But to face death as he did, with the kind of stoicism he did, with the kind of equanimity that he did, I'll tell you, to be able to do that in the face of having brain cancer and know you only had a few weeks left, to be able to have that kind of poise facing your end, I want some of that, wherever that comes from. Gil has a poem. It's on page 168 of the book, and he speaks to that, even before he knew any of the diagnosis. And the poem says, "Help me, doc, and cure me. Cure me if you can, but if you cannot cure me, help me die then like a man. I cannot cure you, mister, your sickness is called death. You cannot quite avoid it, even with my stealth. There is no cure for life still, and there never will be, will. You simply lie there crying, or will you get up, get on with dying, mount your horse, your doom discount, and make your days that you have left count." Gil traveled, Gil wrote, Gil had a wonderful life in New York, and in Oaxaca, and in many points in between. Gil is survived by his 5 children from his first marriage: Gilbert III, William King Haven, James Peabody, and Edward Strobel. 2 stepchildren, John and Robert Ittner. 9 grandchildren, his siblings Nita and Steve Colgate, and his wife of 40 years, Margaret Barclay. Gil's children couldn't be with us today, but his daughter Haven sent a few words to read and to share with you. Haven Colgate. "I wish I could be in Oaxaca tonight to join in celebrating the life of Gil Colgate. Dad was one of those rare and generous souls who displayed a deep and abiding tolerance for all creatures. It always seemed to me he accomplished this by virtue of his profound philosophical understanding of life, which had a rich and magnificent plurality of levels. In his conception, there was room for everyone and everything, with a sense of firmity and solidity, or even a sense that he had tuned into something elemental and important from beyond the yawning maw, which was so reassuring to those around him. I am grateful that Dad had his fantastic community of Oaxaca to romp in and delight him in his last years. And thank all of you for being present in his life and for being here today. Dad was truly charmed by his life in Mexico. And to Margie, who stood by him and helped guide him on the practical plane and to his dying breaths, enormous gratitude. While Dad is already sorely missed, his spirit lives on in his writing, and we are all consoled that he left this legacy for us to consider. So Gloria Asbell now is going to read two of Gil's poems, Learning and In the Palace of My Memories.
A man once told me poetry was a joy. I recall he was a teacher, and so I didn't pay him much attention for the time that I was but a boy. Later, I found out he was right. That doesn't make the teacher bright, but it lets me off the hook at night.
One of Gil's initiatives in his years in Oaxaca was a writing group that met on Wednesday afternoons, first in Villas de Alcalá, and then over in the house in Jalablaco, which I attended, Nora Jaquez attended, and this guy sitting next to me also attended. This guy called William Stone.
It's hard to make accurate predictions, especially about the future. You won't know who you love until you find her. No one goes there anymore. It's too crowded. Always answer a question with a question. When asked, "What time is it?" reply, "You mean, what time is it now?" Finally, you must always attend other people's funerals, or else they won't come to yours.
Great friend of Gil and Margie's, travel companion, others for many years. Terry's going to read some more of the poems from Flossing the Dragon's Teeth, a few of Gil's more reflective poems.
Wealth does not come from things. Yes, there are physical things purchased by exchanges of wealth that are required for existence, and existence is better than not. So wealth, in the idea that saturate our thinking about economics, is not to be done away with. It's important. But there is wealth in ideas, in comfort, in ease, in relationships that have nothing to do with money, regulator of most wealth. 500 years ago, solitude and sleep were wealth. They still are. Leisure, swimming, reading, thinking, true wealth, not for sale.
Margie's going to say a few words here to conclude.
I said I'd say a few words if I didn't start crying, so I tried very hard. I want to thank you all for coming. It took us 3 months to get this last book of Gil's done. He wasn't there, so we couldn't ask him questions. And I want to thank Kurt and Bill and Vicente, of course, that worked so very hard. But I discovered an absolutely wonderful thing happened because it took us so long. You snowbirds are back. Thank you all for being here. It's such a pleasure to see you. I want to thank the people who read beautifully. It was wonderful to hear Gil's voice again. And for all the people that volunteered to help. I mean, I just came in and people kept saying, "What can I do for you? What can I do for you?" to make today happen. There are lots of books. They are my gift to you. Please take them home. I don't want to. I've sent the ones to the states that I need to. I want Gil's books, Gil's words to live on. This is my gift. If you want to make a donation to the library, where we haven't said much about the fact, the great pride Gil had in being named Poet Laureate at the library. He was so proud of that, and when he was asked to write poems, he just took it so seriously, but with such pleasure. Anyway, please take a book. Vicente, I said thank you to. I'll say it again because the book couldn't have happened without him. I will tell you two things about Gil. One has already been talked about. He was kind. He was always kind. And when we interred his ashes in the New York City Marble Cemetery in October, all of his family was there, all of his children, my children, and they all agreed that they never, ever heard him raise his voice. Now, I can tell you, he never raised his voice to me, and I don't know how he did that. I'm a kind of difficult person to live with. But he was the kind and calm to my let's get stuff done personality. And my wish in the future is that I can take some of that, and you're helping me today, take some of the very kind attributes Gil had and make them part of me. So help me when I get that kind of remember Gil, Margie. The other thing, well, it was one thing that sort of irritated me about Gil, and that was his unbelievably superior education. As he was a bit older than I was, he lived in the era when people memorized things. And he used to always quote this stuff to me, and I'm like, okay. But anyway, I'm going to end with a quote that actually was given to me by the Grogans some years ago, which they actually said in reference to Gil. This is from Marcel Proust. Let us be grateful to people who make us happy. They are the charming gardeners who make our souls blossom. Thank you.
How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? How many seas must the white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? How many times must the cannonballs fly before